Alright fellas, yeah, we've got to talk about Jake Paul again. Today marked the first press conference for his upcoming fight against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Now once upon a time, I'll admit, I was somewhat supportive of Jake Paul's entry into boxing. He brought attention, some entertainment value, and at the very least, forced conversations that the sport wasn't having. But as this charade has dragged on, it's become clearer than ever that he's starting to feel more like a stain on the sport than any sort of boost. And if today's press conference was anything to go by, things are only getting worse. You had Oscar De La Hoya out there describing Jake Paul's impact on boxing as admirable. Admirable? Just moments later, that same Jake Paul took jabs at Chavez Jr.'s past addiction struggles and was flat-out disrespectful to Chavez Sr., a boxing legend who had done nothing but show him kindness and respect. That's not admirable, Oscar. That's just embarrassing. But before we dive too deep, real quick, if you're new here, my name's Closter, and this channel is your one-stop shop for everything boxing. So, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I've got you covered, always. Now, we've talked about this upcoming Jake Paul vs. Chavez Jr. fight before on the channel, and honestly, I didn't think it would happen this quickly. I figured they'd save this one for when Jake wanted to make some fake title run. But it turns out, they've got other names in mind for that belt-chasing nonsense, and we'll get into that later. Let's be real. This fight was only made because Jake struck out with both Canelo and Tank. So, in need of a name, he pulled Chavez Jr. off the shelf. And let's not kid ourselves, this entire card is built to milk the loyalty of Mexican boxing fans. You've got Chavez Jr. and Zordo both on the bill in Los Angeles. This isn't Jake's crowd. He's not the draw. It's Chavez and Zordo carrying the ticket sales. At today's press conference, Jake did exactly what you'd expect. Acted like a clown. He delivered the usual lines about how this is some monumental challenge and how it's going to shift the way the boxing media views him. All nonsense, empty words. The guy walks around with a chip on his shoulder like he's the savior of boxing, when in reality, he's just exploiting loopholes and old names. He mocked Chavez Jr.'s personal struggles, like some kind of edgy teenager looking for laughs online. And credit to Chavez, he brushed it off, laughed it off even, like it didn't matter. But the cheap shots didn't end there. Jake even took a few digs at Chavez Sr., who, ironically, was being complimentary of him. It was cringe. Just pure cringe. What's obvious is they're trying to paint Chavez Jr. as being back. We've heard this script before, literally the same PR playbook they ran for the Tyson fight. You've got Chavez Sr. saying things like, "I've never seen him train this hard." We've heard that before, haven't we? The reality is, Chavez Jr. is a fighter who should have retired years ago. His loss to Anderson Silva should have been the final chapter. But money talks. And look, part of me hopes the hype is real, that he is taking it seriously. But let's be honest, he's nowhere near prime form. Jake is younger, fresher, more active, and probably going to walk through a guy who couldn't get past Uriah Hall. Strip away the Chavez name, strip away the legacy, and just look at the boxer in front of us today. And Jake, unfortunately, is levels above him. But what's even more depressing is what might come next. If you thought this circus was bad, the sequel could be worse. So, let's talk about what's looming. The less sad route, if we can even call it that, is a rumored exhibition bout with Tank Davis. Yeah, that Tank Davis. The same Tank who's possibly rematching Rolly in August. And guess what? Jake confirmed in the presser that they're actively working behind the scenes to make the Tank fight happen. Possibly this November, maybe on Netflix. Now, as much as I dislike this influencer crossover era, I'll admit, Estito Aite, Jake vs. Tank promotional build-up would be entertaining. It'd be loud, ridiculous, and hyped to the moon. But the fight itself? Almost certainly trash. It would go down the same way Logan vs. Floyd did. Flashy lead-up, boring main event. But, sure, it'd get clicks. That's what they're after anyway. The real nightmare scenario is if the Tank fight doesn't happen, and Jake turns his eyes toward a legitimate world title. And brace yourselves, because this isn't some wild fantasy. We've already seen sanctioning bodies flirt with this idea. We've had presidents of major orgs outright say they'd love to give Jake a shot at a title. And today's press conference hinted at it again, with none other than Zordo Ramirez being the potential opponent. You see what they're doing here, right? Zordo wasn't just added to this card randomly, he's being positioned. As Jake's possible gateway to a title belt, WBO or WBA, take your pick. Golden Boy and Jake's camp have both dropped subtle promotional crumbs, and it's clear they're planning ahead. And man, it's depressing. We've just had Pacquiao, after years out, get ranked 5th by the WBC, in one of the sport's deepest divisions, no less. It sparked outrage, and rightfully so. But now imagine Jake Paul getting ranked high enough, at cruiserweight, to be sanctioned for a world title. These aren't hypotheticals anymore. The door is wide open, and instead of Zordo chasing real challenges like, I don't know, Jai Opetaia, the actual boogeyman of the cruiserweights, he's being lined up for this circus. Opetaia versus Zordo is the fight we should be seeing. It's the fight that would give the division some real legitimacy. But instead, we're wasting time hyping up Jake Paul's next vanity match. We can only hope someone like Turki Alalshik steps in and makes the right fights happen. The guy's made his distaste for Jake clear in the past, and I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if he undercuts this entire show and sets up a better card elsewhere. But one thing I still don't get: why is Jake so obsessed with being seen as a real boxer? No one's asking for that. Just give us what we actually want: Paul versus KSI. That's it. Stick that in Wembley, sell it out, and move on. But apparently a 2.5-pound difference makes that impossible. Sure, mate. Unfortunately, the writing's on the wall. At some point, Jake Paul will fight for a legitimate world title. Maybe it'll be for a bridgerweight belt. You could almost stomach that. Go take a look at those rankings. It's not exactly stacked. But if it's anything else, anything with real prestige attached, it's a slap in the face to every boxer who grinded their whole life for a shot they may never get. And what makes it worse is Jake standing there talking about Chavez Jr. being born into privilege, saying he had everything handed to him. Has Jake looked in the mirror lately? The only reason he's where he is because legends like Silva, Woodley, and now Chavez Jr. were willing to share the ring with him and prop up this whole illusion. Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you make of Jake Paul versus Chavez Jr.? And how would you feel if Jake actually gets a world title shot? Drop your opinions in the comments. I'll be reading and replying. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.